Many of the gardening jobs and projects that we do in autumn are to prepare our gardens for spring, and today's project is no different. I'm going to be showing how I plant a bulb lasagna. And a bulb lasagna, all it is a way that you can get a lot of different types of flowering bulbs in the same pot or container so that you have continuous blooms from early to late spring, sometimes into early summer as well. And it's dead easy. It's a project for now in November, and you do it now, you forget about it for a couple of months, and then you're rewarded in February, March with the first blossoms of spring. Now, what is a bulb lasagna? Hopefully, this little demo helps you to visualize what it is. What you have here are 3 different types of bulbs, and they're in different layers. We've got the grape hyacinth just here, we've got irises here, and tulips at the bottom. And all of these flowering bulbs need different planting depths, which is why we can fit them all in the same container. And they also have different flowering times. So the idea with a bulb lasagna is that you get continuous flowers from early on in very early spring all the way to the end of spring, early summer, if you plan ahead. These are the materials that I'm using, modeled by Maggie. First off, we have the bulbs here, and I'll go through each of those in just a second. I have a hand tool. You can use whatever you want. You could even just use your gloved hands. And then, of course, we've got the container back here, and it needs to be deep enough for your deepest bulbs, which are going to be the daffodils over here. I have the potting mix in this container. This is a bagged potting mix. It's organic and peat-free, and it has lots of fiber in there and lots of structure that are going to help the bulbs to survive the winter and thrive. Lots of nutrients in there as well. To help add a little bit more drainage and structure to that potting mix, I have some vermiculite, but you could use perlite, you could use grit, use what you have just to create a little bit of a looser flow through the potting mix. And then lastly, I have some alpine gravel to use as a mulch topping. And you could use pea gravel, you could use something like horticultural grit, or you could just not use this at all if you want to save some money. I have the bulbs that I've chosen for my bulb lasagna laid out here in front of me. And the 3 factors that came into play with me choosing these were, number 1, when are they flowering? Because I want bulbs that are going to be flowering from February all the way to June. So this group should give me that. The second is in terms of height. If I'm choosing 2 bulbs that are flowering at the same time, are they going to be competing with one another for space? And so I chose ones that are lower to the ground and ones that are higher up, and that will give really big, beautiful displays. Now, the last factor is completely subjective, and it's just in terms of color. So I chose bulbs based on colors that I liked and also color combinations of flowers that are blooming together. Okay, let's have a closer look at the specific bulbs that I chose. Now, the first 2, these ones will flower in February and March. And we have a yellow crocus, which is going to be quite short. And then we have the painted lady iris, which is a little bit taller. Following up in March and April, a beautiful golden daffodil. And I've paired it with grape hyacinth, which are a little bit shorter. You can also use these flowers as a natural Easter egg dye. In April and May, I have an assortment of pink tulips, and then following on from them in June, this stunning Black Beauty iris. Planting a bulb lasagna is really easy, but there does need to be a little bit of planning. And so what I've done as my first step of planting these bulbs in the container is I've rearranged them in terms of planting depth. And over here on the right, I've got the crocus and the grape hyacinth, and they go in at 2 inches deep, so 2 inches from the surface. The next ones up are the irises, and they go in at 3 inches, so they form the second layer down. Next are the tulips. They go in at 4 inches deep. And then lastly, we have the daffodils, which go in at 5 inches deep. So I've got 4 layers that I've planned out here that will be in actual layers like a lasagna inside the container. And when you do a bulb lasagna, you could have just 2 layers, you could have 3, you could have more even. But if you do decide to go with more, make sure that there's enough space around each bulb and that the container is big and deep enough. I'm just going to begin by filling the bottom of this container with a good couple of inches of this potting mix. And just keep it here to the side. With the 2 inches in there, I'm just going to spread it out a bit. And I'm going to begin by layering in the deepest bulbs, which are going to be these daffodils. There were 9 daffodil bulbs, and I've spaced them out here equally. They're much closer than I would plant out in the garden, but they're going to do just fine. Now, next, another layer of the potting mix. And what I'm trying to do is just put enough in to cover the tops of those daffodil bulbs. And remember, when you're planting bulbs, pointy end up. Okay, that's good enough. So I kind of know where those 9 bulbs are. And next come the tulips. And I'm just going to space them out to be in between. I've ended up putting 12 in here, and they are arranged so that they're not blocking the lower bulbs. Next, more potting mix. And now I've gotten to the layer where I am planting 2 different types of bulbs together. And these are 2 different types of iris, and they bloom at different points in the year. So this is as early as February, and this one's much later in June. So how do you plant these together? Well, you can mix them up, you can put them into rows, and I've started with doing a row of the early type here, 3 rows actually, and now I'm going to go in between and pop in the later ones. And as long as you give them a good 2 to 3 inches distance apart, they'll be good to go. And that is the basic premise of planting a bulb lasagna. So you have a decent sized container, one that has quite a bit of depth, and then you put a layer of potting mix, then a layer of your deepest bulbs, potting mix, bulbs, however many layers of bulbs you need, and then finish it off with a good couple of inches of potting mix on the top. And I really do recommend that you put in a layer of some kind of grit or gravel at the top, very fine stuff, so that the bulbs can push up through it, but it keeps the potting mix from washing away in the winter, rains and snow and all sorts. And it also helps stop any weeds from growing. I guess I don't have to water this container. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put this on the deck. I'm going to prop it up though, so it's not sitting directly on the surface. This is quite heavy. I'll get Josh's help. And that will help any excess moisture to drain from the drainage hole at the bottom of the container, because bulbs do not like sitting in wet soil. This planter is very heavy, so if you feel that you might not be able to carry something of this size and you don't have help, it might be better to put your container in situ where you want it to be and then plant it up there. And I really do recommend that you put it someplace where you're going to pass or you're going to see it regularly. Now mine is within view of the kitchen window, so I can look out here and keep an eye out for those very first flowers of spring, which should start popping up in February. And until then, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to let the winter rains keep it moist. And of course, it's on those bricks, so extra moisture will drain away. One thing I should say though is that if you have very cold temperatures in winter, and we're talking 29 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 1.7 Celsius or lower, tulip bulbs may not survive in containers. So you might want to put your container, your planter, in a frost-free but still cold place, like an unheated greenhouse or shed. It doesn't need any light initially, and then move it back out when temperatures get a little bit warmer. And then you should be able to have lovely blooms all of next spring. I hope you enjoyed this idea, this gardening project. And if you have any questions about bulb lasagnas, leave me a comment or question down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Lovely Greens. Bye for now.